Kindness is its own reward. That's what Mira's grandmother whispered to her every night before bed, stroking her wild auburn hair as moonlight filtered through their cottage window. But when you saved a beast that everyone else feared, you learned that some rewards came with teeth, with claiming marks that burned into your soul, and with a debt that could never be repaid, only collected. The forest at the edge of Thornwick Village had always been forbidden. The elders spoke of it in hushed tones, crossing themselves when its shadow stretched too long across the fields. They called it the Cursed Wood, where wolves the size of horses prowled with eyes that gleamed with terrible intelligence, and where girls who wandered too far were never seen again. Mira had been warned her entire life. Stay away from the trees, never go past the stone markers, never ever venture beyond where the light could reach you. But the elders had never told her what to do when you heard something suffering. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Listened to Pain. Mira wasn't supposed to be in the forest that day. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the tree line, but the winter had been brutal, and the herbs her grandmother needed to fight the fever didn't grow in safe places. Moonshade and silverleaf only bloomed in shadow, in the deep places where sunlight feared to tread. "I'll be quick," she had promised the old woman shivering beneath 3 blankets. "I know where they grow." Her grandmother's fevered eyes had focused on her with sudden clarity. "Not the forest, child. Promise me, not the cursed wood." But Mira had already made a different promise, the one where she wouldn't let the only family she had left die because she was too afraid of stories told to scare children. The basket on her arm swung as she picked her way between the ancient oaks. January frost crunched beneath her worn boots, and her breath plumed white in air that tasted of pine and secrets. She had found the moonshade quickly. Its purple blooms were unmistakable even in winter, and was reaching for a cluster of silver leaf when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the quiet wood, a whimper, low and pained, followed by the rattle of metal on metal. Mira froze, her fingers still outstretched toward the herbs. Every instinct screamed at her to grab what she needed and run. The village stories were full of tricks, of monsters that mimicked human sounds to lure the foolish close. The sound came again. Not a trick, not a mimicry, pure, animal suffering. She should have run. Later she would replay this moment 1,000 times, wondering what her life would have been if she had just turned around. But Mira had never been good at walking away from pain. It was why she spent her evenings setting broken bird wings and nursing orphaned rabbits, why the village children brought her every injured creature they found. Her grandmother called it a gift. The village healer called it a curse. "You feel too much, girl," old Marta had told her once. "Empathy like yours will destroy you. Some things aren't meant to be saved." But Mira was already moving toward the sound, her basket forgotten by the silverleaf patch. She found him in a clearing she had never seen before. Though she had walked these woods since childhood, the space was perfectly circular, ringed by stones that hummed with an energy that made her teeth ache. And at its center, trapped in chains that looked older than the trees themselves, was the largest wolf she had ever seen. He was magnificent and terrible. His fur was black as midnight, shot through with silver that caught the weak winter sun like starlight. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Not animal eyes. Not really. They were ice blue and blazing with intelligence that was frighteningly human, fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run and step closer in equal measure. The chains were iron, thick as her wrist, wound around his body, so tightly she could see where they had rubbed his fur away, leaving raw, bleeding wounds. One paw was caught in a trap that had broken bone. She could see the unnatural angle even from where she stood. The wolf watched her. He didn't snarl or snap. He simply stared, his massive chest heaving, steam rising from his nostrils in the cold air. Oh, Mira breathed, and the sound was horror and heartbreak mixed together. She should have run. She should have returned to the village, told the hunters, let them deal with this creature that was surely dangerous, surely deadly. The chains were there for a reason. Something had bound this beast, had wanted it trapped. But his eyes, God help her, his eyes were begging. Mira took a step forward. The wolf's ears flicked toward her, but he didn't move, didn't growl. She took another step, and another, until she was close enough to see the silver flecks in his dark fur, to smell the blood and exhaustion rolling off him. "Easy," she whispered, though she didn't know if she was reassuring him or herself. "I won't hurt you." The wolf made a sound, not quite a whimper, not quite a growl. It sounded almost like a laugh, bitter and disbelieving, as if the idea of her hurting him was absurd. She knelt beside him, and up close the chains were even worse than she'd thought. They weren't just iron. There were runes carved into the metal, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. The runes seemed to pulse in time with the wolf's heartbeat, and where they touched his skin, the fur had burned away completely. "What did they do to you?" she asked softly. The wolf's eyes closed, just for a moment, and she saw exhaustion there that went bone deep. How long had he been trapped? Days? Weeks? Mira's fingers found the clasp of the first chain. It was locked with a mechanism she didn't recognize, but her grandmother had taught her about locks. "Every lock is just a puzzle," the old woman used to say. "You just have to find what it's asking for." This lock was asking for blood. She didn't think. She pressed her thumb against the sharp edge of the rune, letting her blood well up and drop onto the ancient metal. The chain hissed like a living thing, and the green light flared bright before dying completely. The clasp fell open. The wolf inhaled sharply, his whole body shuddering as the first chain fell away. "It's okay," Mira murmured, reaching for the second chain. "I've got you. I've got you." She didn't know how long it took. Time seemed strange in the clearing, stretching and compressing. Each chain required blood, and by the time she removed the last one, her hands were slick with red, a dozen small cuts burning in the cold air. The trap on his paw was the worst. It was designed to hold, to hurt, and it took all her strength to pry the metal jaws open. The wolf never snapped at her. Even when she must have caused him agony, he only watched her with those two intelligent eyes, something like wonder mixed with the pain. When the last chain fell away, when the trap was finally open, and she was able to gently extract his mangled paw, Mira sat back on her heels, breathing hard. Her hands were shaking. Her dress was stained with her blood and his. She should get up. She should run before the wolf recovered enough to remember she was prey. But she was tired, so tired, and the world was spinning in a way that suggested she'd lost more blood than she'd thought. If stories like Mira's remind you that compassion can change everything, even in the darkest forests, subscribe to join others who believe that courage and kindness deserve recognition. "You're free," she whispered. "Go, before whoever did this comes back." The wolf didn't move. He stared at her, and the winter air between them felt charged with something she didn't understand. Then, slowly, he began to change. Mira scrambled backward, her breath catching as the wolf's body rippled. Fur receded into bronze skin, bones cracked, and reformed with sounds that made her stomach turn. The muzzle shortened, reshaped, became the strong jaw of a man. And suddenly it wasn't a wolf lying in the clearing anymore. It was a man, naked, scarred, and absolutely terrifying in his beauty. He was tall, she could tell even with him lying down, with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. His hair was black as his fur had been, falling past his shoulders in tangled waves, and his eyes, those impossible ice-blue eyes, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like prey after all. But it was the mark on his chest that made her blood run cold, a symbol burned into his skin right above his heart, a crown wrapped in thorns and wolves. "No," she breathed, because she knew that mark. Every person in every village across the 5 territories knew that mark. The man smiled, and it was a predator's smile, all sharp edges and danger. When he spoke, his voice was rough from disuse, but it carried power that made the air itself seem to bow. "Thank you, little savior," the Alpha King said. "You've just made a very, very dangerous mistake." Chapter 2. The Debt That Binds. Mira's heart hammered against her ribs as the Alpha King rose to his feet. He moved like liquid shadow, all predatory grace, despite the injuries she'd just freed him from. The wounds on his body were already healing. She could see the flesh knitting itself back together, the burns from the rune chains fading to pink scars that would likely disappear within hours. "You're him!" she whispered, unable to look away, even though every survival instinct screamed at her to run. "You're Kieran Nightshade, the Alpha King." "I am." His voice was dark honey and smoke, the kind of voice that could command armies or seduce saints. He tilted his head, studying her with those unsettling blue eyes. "And you are?" "Nobody." The word came out too fast, too desperate. "I'm nobody. Just a village girl who heard. I didn't know. Please, I need to go. My grandmother is sick, and I need to get the herbs back to her before—" "You're bleeding." He moved faster than her eyes could track, suddenly close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his bare skin. His hand caught her wrist, lifting her bloodied palm between them. "You gave your blood to break the chains." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway, trying to pull her hand back. His grip was gentle but immovable. "Do you know what you've done, little savior? I freed you?" Her voice cracked on the words. "I'm sorry if I shouldn't have, if the chains were there for a reason, but you were suffering, and I couldn't just—" "The chains were witch-forged," Kieran interrupted, his thumb tracing one of the cuts on her palm, with a touch so light, it sent shivers up her arm. "Blood magic, bound by my bastard cousin, who thinks he should wear my crown. They were designed to hold me until the next full moon, at which point the spell would have killed me." His eyes lifted to hers, and there was something burning in their depths that made her mouth go dry. "You saved my life." Oh, she didn't know what else to say. "Good?" His laugh was unexpected, a rough, genuine sound that transformed his face from terrifying to devastatingly handsome. "Good." She says good. He shook his head, and when he looked at her again, the amusement had faded into something far more serious. "In my world, little savior, life debts are not small things. You didn't just free me, you bound yourself to me." The forest seemed to go silent. Even the wind died, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. "What?" Mira managed. "Blood freely given to break chains. Forged in blood, magic creates a bond." Kieran's voice was soft now, almost regretful, especially when that blood comes from— He stopped, his nostrils flaring as he inhaled deeply. His eyes widened, just slightly, and he pulled her closer, studying her face with sudden intensity. "You have no idea what you are, do you?" "I'm a healer's apprentice," she said, trying again to pull away. "I live with my grandmother. I gather herbs and set broken bones and—" "You're a moon-blessed." The words fell between them like stones. "Rare. Precious. Humans touched by the old magic, capable of breaking spells that would kill a normal person to even attempt." His grip on her wrist tightened, not painfully, but possessively. "And you just gave your blood to an Alpha King. Do you understand what that means?" She shook her head, fear crawling up her spine. "It means you're mine now." Kieran's voice dropped to a growl that resonated in her chest. "The bond won't break until the debt is paid. And a life debt to an Alpha King?" He smiled, and it was all teeth. "That's not a debt that can be paid quickly, little savior." "No." Mira finally managed to wrench her hand free, stumbling backward. "No. I don't belong to anyone. I saved you because you were suffering, not because I wanted. I don't want anything from you. Just let me go. Please." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. "You don't want anything? No wish for gold, for power, for a place in my court?" He stepped toward her, and she stepped back, a dance that continued until her back hit a tree. "Most would kill for the chance to bind themselves to me, and yet you beg to be released." "I just want to go home." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "My grandmother is dying. I need to get these herbs to her. Whatever debt you think I'm owed, consider it paid. I don't want it." Kieran stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he did something she didn't expect. He laughed again, but this time it was softer, almost admiring. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." He reached past her, and she flinched. But he was only picking up her forgotten basket from where it had fallen in the snow. He studied the purple moonshade blooms and silver leaf with a knowing eye. Winter fever? She nodded, not trusting her voice. These will help, but they won't cure her. Not if she's been sick long. He looked at her, and for just a moment, she saw something that might have been compassion in those cold eyes. 3 weeks, Mira whispered. She's getting worse. Kieran was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of kingdoms. Very well, little savior. I'll make you a deal. I don't want. Hush. The command in his voice made her mouth snap shut involuntarily. You saved my life. That creates a debt whether you want it or not. The bond is already forming. You'll feel it soon if you don't already. A pull, here. He touched his chest, right over his heart, leading back to me. You can try to fight it, but it will only grow stronger. Mira's hand moved unconsciously to her own chest, where she'd been feeling a strange warmth since the moment he'd shifted. A tightness, like an invisible thread pulling taut. I see you feel it already. Kieran's smile was grim. The bond will draw you to me, and me to you, until the debt is satisfied. It's old magic, older than my kind, older than the witches who tried to bind me. You cannot run from it. Then what do you want? The question came out defeated, exhausted. I want you to accept reality. He held out the basket to her. I'm going to save your grandmother. Not with herbs, but with something better. And in exchange, you're going to come with me willingly. Come with you where? To my kingdom. To the court of Night and Fang. His eyes glittered in the winter light. My cousin thinks he's won. He thinks I'll die in these chains, and he'll take my throne. I'm going to show him exactly how wrong he is. But I can't go back alone, wounded and weak. I need time to heal, to gather my strength. What does that have to do with me? Kieran's smile turned wicked. You're going to be my mate. The word hit her like a physical blow. You're what? Not in truth, he added quickly, though there was something in his eyes that suggested he wasn't being entirely honest. In appearance only. My cousin used a witch to bind me. That means he has witches on his side. I need something stronger. I need a moon blessed at my side, someone whose very presence will make his hired magic wielders think twice. I don't know anything about being a mate, Mira protested. I don't know anything about your world. I'd be useless. You'd be protection. Kieran stepped closer, and this time she had nowhere to retreat. The bond between us will grow stronger the more time we spend together. Eventually it will be visible to those with the sight, a mark that shows you're under my protection. No one in my court would dare harm you, and in exchange, your presence will shield me while I'm vulnerable. And my grandmother? I'll send my healer to her tonight. He'll cure the fever and ensure she wants for nothing while you're gone. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheek with shocking gentleness. I'm not a monster, little savior. I pay my debts. You saved me. I'll save what you love most. Mira closed her eyes, hating that she was even considering this, but her grandmother was dying. And this creature, this Alpha King, was offering her the one thing she couldn't refuse. How long? She asked, not opening her eyes. How long would I have to stay with you? Until my throne is secure. A few months, perhaps less, if my cousin is as foolish as I think he is. His hand dropped from her face. I give you my word, on my crown and bloodline, that you'll be returned home safely when this is done, unharmed and free of the bond. She opened her eyes to find him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. You swear it? On my life. The words rang with power, with truth that resonated in her bones. You have my oath, Mira of Thornwick Village. I will protect you, provide for you, and return you home when our business is concluded. Do we have a deal? She thought of her grandmother's fevered face, of the way the old woman's breathing had become labored and wet. She thought of coming home to find her dead, of living with the knowledge that she could have saved her but didn't. And she thought of the strange warmth in her chest, the pull toward this dangerous, beautiful creature who stood before her without shame or clothing, offering her a devil's bargain, wrapped in mercy. "One condition," she heard herself say. "I want to see her first. I want to watch your healer cure her before I agree to anything." Kieran's smile was approving. "Smart girl. Yes, you'll see her healed. Tonight, when the moon rises, we'll go to your village. My healer will cure her, and you'll have a chance to say goodbye." His hand extended toward her, palm up. "Do we have an accord?" Mira stared at his hand. Strong, scarred, the hand of a warrior and a king. Every instinct she had screamed that taking it would change everything, that she was standing at a crossroads, and the path she chose now would determine the rest of her life. But her grandmother was dying, and this monster had given his word. She placed her bloodied hand in his. The moment their palms touched, power surged between them. Mira gasped as heat flooded through her veins, as something ancient and primal recognized something equally powerful. The thread in her chest pulled tight, then settled into place with a rightness that terrified her. Kieran's eyes flared bright blue, and she saw his canines lengthen, saw the wolf surface in his expression before he wrestled it back under control. "Yes," he breathed, and his voice was layered with that growl that made her want to bare her throat. "Oh, you're going to be perfect, little savior." Before she could ask what he meant, he pulled her close and pressed his lips to her forehead. The kiss burned like a brand, and when he pulled away, she saw the mark of his mouth glowing silver on her skin. "What did you do?" She touched the mark, and it pulsed with warmth. "Sealed our bargain." Kieran released her, finally stepping back, "and marked you as mine for all to see. No wolf in the 5 territories will touch you now. You're under my protection, Mira. For better or worse, your fate is bound to mine." She wanted to be angry. She wanted to feel violated or trapped. But all she felt was that strange warmth spreading through her chest, and the undeniable pull toward the Alpha King, who stood before her with satisfaction burning in his ice-blue eyes. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the forest path. "Let's get you home. Your grandmother is waiting, and we have a court to conquer." Mira bent to retrieve her basket with shaking hands, her mind racing with everything that had just happened. She'd come to the forest for herbs. She was leaving with an Alpha King's mark on her forehead, and a fate she couldn't begin to understand. Her grandmother had been right to warn her about the cursed wood. She just hadn't been specific enough about which curse Mira should fear most. Chapter 3. The Village That Whispered. The walk back to Thornwick Village should have taken an hour. With the Alpha King at her side, it took 20 minutes. Kieran had shifted back into his wolf form. Apparently walking naked through a forest in January wasn't appealing even to immortal creatures. But he'd done something before the transformation that made Mira's cheeks burn. He'd reached into the hollow of an ancient oak and pulled out a bundle of clothes that had been hidden there, wrapped in oilcloth. "Always have an escape plan," he'd said, with a smirk that suggested he'd been prepared for his eventual freedom all along, even when trapped by blood magic. Now he padded beside her in wolf form, massive and silent, his presence making every bird fall quiet and every small animal flee. Mira kept her hand near his head, her fingers occasionally brushing the soft fur behind his ears, not because she needed to, but because the bond hummed with satisfaction every time she touched him, and the warmth eased some of the terror clawing at her chest. The mark on her forehead had faded from glowing silver to a faint shimmer, visible only in certain light. Kieran had assured her it would be invisible to humans, but those with magic, witches, wolves, fae would see it clear as day. "They'll know you're claimed," he'd said. "They'll know harming you means death." Claimed. The word sat heavy in her stomach, like a stone. The village came into view as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the snow-covered roofs in shades of amber and rose. Thornwick was small, maybe 200 souls at most, a collection of timber houses clustered around a central square, with its well and winter market. Smoke rose from chimneys, and Mira could smell bread baking, could hear the distant sound of children playing before supper. Home? It had always been home. So why did it suddenly feel like a cage she was about to escape? "Stay here," she murmured to Kieran as they reached the tree line. If anyone sees you. The wolf huffed, and she knew he was laughing at her, as if an alpha king needed a village girl to tell him how to stay hidden. Mira's cottage sat at the edge of the village, far enough from the others that her grandmother's herb gathering and healing work wouldn't disturb anyone. It was a tiny thing, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it had been filled with love and laughter for as long as Mira could remember. Now it was filled with the smell of sickness. She pushed through the door to find her grandmother exactly as she'd left her, a small, shrunken form beneath too many blankets, her breathing shallow and labored. But the old woman's eyes opened when Mira entered, and there was still sharpness there, still the intelligence that had raised Mira from a baby. "You went to the forest." It wasn't a question. Her grandmother's voice was weak, but edged with knowing. "I can smell it on you. Pine and wild magic." "I needed the moonshade, Gran." Mira knelt beside the bed, pulling out the herbs, and the silver leaf. "I'll make you a tea that will." "Child." A trembling hand emerged from the blankets to catch Mira's wrist. "What did you do?" The question was so similar to Kieran's that Mira almost laughed. Instead, she felt tears prick her eyes. "I saved someone who was suffering," she whispered. "And he's going to save you." Her grandmother's grip tightened with surprising strength. "Show me your forehead." Mira tilted her head, letting the fading afternoon light catch the mark. She watched her grandmother's face drain, of what little color it had. "No," the old woman breathed. "Oh, Mira, no. That's a claiming mark. That's—" She broke off coughing, and Mira held her until the fit passed. When she could speak again, her voice was urgent, desperate. "Whose mark is that? What did you promise?" "Nothing I didn't choose." Mira smoothed the blankets with shaking hands. "He's going to heal you, Gran. Really heal you, not just ease the symptoms. And in exchange, I'm going to help him for a few months. That's all." "That's all?" Her grandmother's laugh was bitter and wet. "Child, you don't understand what you've done. A claiming mark from one of them. From the wolves. It's not temporary. It's not just politics or bargains. Once you're marked, once the bond sets." A knock at the door interrupted her. 3 sharp raps that somehow sounded both polite and commanding. Mira opened it to find a man standing on her threshold. He was older than Kieran, perhaps 50 in human years, with silver threading through his dark hair and laugh lines around amber eyes. He was dressed in traveling clothes of quality far beyond what anyone in Thornwick could afford, soft leather and fine wool that marked him as wealthy, foreign. But it was the way he held himself that gave him away, the same predatory grace, the same sense of leashed power. Another wolf. "Mira of Thornwick?" His voice was warm, professional. "My name is Dr. Marcus Ashwood. I believe you're expecting me." She stepped aside wordlessly, letting him enter. He moved immediately to her grandmother's bedside, and Mira saw the old woman's eyes widen as she recognized what he was. "Peace, honored elder." Marcus's tone shifted to something reverent, almost gentle. "I mean no harm. Your granddaughter did my king a great service today. He wishes to repay that debt by restoring your health." "Your king." Gran's voice was faint. The Alpha King himself was in those chains. He was. Marcus opened the leather bag he carried, pulling out vials of liquid that glowed faintly in the dimming light, betrayed by his own blood and left to die. Your Mira freed him, when any sensible person would have run. He glanced at Mira with something like respect. She has a good heart. Recklessly good, perhaps, but good nonetheless. She has a foolish heart, Gran corrected. But there was love in the words. She always has. Brings home every broken thing she finds. Well, she found a king in chains. Marcus began mixing the vials with practiced ease. And now that king will move heaven and earth to keep her safe, which starts with keeping you alive and well, so she has something to come home to when this business is done. He worked quickly, mixing potions and murmuring words in a language Mira didn't recognize. When he finally lifted a cup to her grandmother's lips, the liquid inside glowed soft blue. "Drink, honored elder. All of it. It won't taste pleasant, but it will burn the fever from your lungs and restore what the sickness has stolen." Gran drank, and Mira watched in amazement as color flooded back into her grandmother's cheeks. The old woman's breathing eased, deepened, became strong and clear. The transformation took less than 5 minutes, and by the end of it, her grandmother was sitting up unaided, looking 20 years younger. Mother Moon, Gran breathed, staring at her own steady hands. Old magic and older knowledge. Marcus packed away his vials with satisfaction. You'll want to rest for a few hours. The potion works fast, but it's exhausting. By morning, you'll feel better than you have in years. He turned to Mira. The king waits at the tree line. He wants to speak with you before we leave. Leave? Gran's hand shot out to grab Mira's arm. Leave when? Tonight? At moonrise, Marcus confirmed. We have a long journey ahead, and the king's enemies won't wait. The sooner we reach the court of Night and Fang, the safer everyone will be. No. Gran's grip was iron now, fear bright in her newly clear eyes. You can't take her. She's just a girl. She doesn't know anything about your world, about the politics and danger, which is why she'll have the protection of an Alpha King. Marcus's voice was kind but firm. Honored elder, your granddaughter saved his life. The bond is already forming. Even if she stayed here, it would pull at her, drive her mad with the need to be near him. Better she goes willingly, with his protection and oath, than fights the bond until it breaks her. Mira felt sick. He said it would fade. He said when the debt was paid. Life debts don't fade, child. Her grandmother's voice was hollow. They transform. They become something else, something permanent. She looked at Marcus with eyes that had seen too much. The mark on her forehead. It's already deeper than it should be, isn't it? Already bonding to her magic. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Yes, he finally said. The king didn't expect, none of us expected, that she would be moon-blessed. That changes things. The bond will be stronger, faster, more permanent. He lied to me. The words came out flat, emotionless. He said I could go home when this was over. He believes that. Marcus met her eyes steadily. The king is many things, but he doesn't lie. Not about oaths. He fully intends to give you a choice when his throne is secure. But the bond, he sighed. The bond may have other ideas. Moon-blessed mates to alpha wolves. It's rare, powerful. The magic itself wants you together. The room spun. Mira sat down hard on the floor, her mind racing. Mate. Not pretend. Not temporary. The magic wanted her bound to an Alpha King permanently. I can't, she whispered. I can't. Her grandmother slid from the bed, stronger than she'd been in weeks, and knelt beside Mira. Listen to me, child. Listen well. If you're truly bound to the Alpha King, if the magic has chosen you as his mate, then you have 2 choices. You can fight it, resist it, and let it drive you both mad. She cupped Mira's face with gentle hands. Or you can be clever. You can learn his world, understand his power, and carve out a place where you're not just his mate but his equal. You're moon-blessed, Mira. That's not nothing. That's rare magic, old power. Use it. I'm just a healer's apprentice, Mira protested weakly. You're a girl who walked into a cursed forest alone to save me. A girl who freed an Alpha King without thought of reward. A girl with magic in her blood and courage in her heart. Gran's smile was fierce, proud. You're my granddaughter, and we don't break easily. Mira wanted to argue, wanted to say this was different, that she wasn't ready, that she was terrified, but her grandmother's words settled something in her chest, straightened her spine. She had made a choice in that clearing. She'd given her blood freely. Whatever came next, she would face it with her head high. I need to pack, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'll help. Gran stood, moving with an ease that was miraculous after weeks of being bedridden. And Mira, take the grimoire. Mira's head snapped up. Gran, that's been in our family for 200 years. I know. Her grandmother was already moving to the hidden panel in the wall where the ancient book was kept. It's filled with healing magic and protective spells. If you're going into the world of wolves and politics, You'll need every advantage. Besides, she pulled out the leather-bound tome, its pages yellow with age. It belonged to your mother. She'd want you to have it. The mention of her mother, dead since Mira's birth, made her throat tight. She took the grimoire with reverent hands, feeling the pulse of old magic in its pages. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." Gran's expression was grim. "Just promise me you'll come back. Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter how deep the bond goes, you won't lose yourself. You're Mira of Thornwick. Remember that." "I promise." They packed quickly, simple dresses, her healer's kit, the grimoire wrapped in oilcloth. Mira changed into her sturdiest travel clothes, braided her wild auburn hair, and tried not to think about the fact that she was leaving the only home she'd ever known. When she stepped outside, the moon was rising, fat and silver in the darkening sky. Kieran stood at the tree line in human form, once again dressed in the clothes from the oak tree. In the moonlight he looked otherworldly, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. "Ready?" he asked quietly. "No," Mira said honestly, "but I'm coming anyway." His smile was approval and satisfaction mixed. "Good girl." He held out his hand, and after only a moment's hesitation she took it. The bond hummed with contentment. Behind her, her grandmother stood in the doorway, frail but healing, watching her only family walk into the darkness with a wolf king. "Be brave, little bird," Gran called, "and be clever." Mira didn't look back. If she did, she might not be able to leave. Instead, she squeezed Kieran's hand and let him lead her into the forest, toward a destiny she hadn't chosen, but could no longer escape. The Alpha King's debt was being collected, and she was the payment. Chapter 4. The Journey into Shadow. They traveled through the night, moving deeper into the cursed wood than Mira had ever dared venture. Kieran set a brutal pace, and she quickly understood why. Every hour they spent near Thornwick was an hour his enemies could track them, could find him while he was still weak. Marcus had shifted into his wolf form, a massive creature with gray-silver fur that blended into the moonlit shadows. He ranged ahead, scouting their path, while Kieran remained human, his hand never leaving Mira's, as he guided her through the darkness. "Keep up, little savior," he murmured, when she stumbled over a root. "We have another hour before we can rest." "I'm trying," she gasped, her legs burning. She wasn't used to this, wasn't used to running through forests in the dead of night like some kind of wild thing. Her life had been herbs and healing, quiet cottage mornings, and village gossip. Now she was fleeing through darkness with an Alpha King, whose enemies wanted him dead. Kieran glanced at her, and something in his expression softened. Without warning, he swept her up into his arms, cradling her against his chest, as if she weighed nothing. "What are you?" "Hush." His voice was a low rumble. "You're slowing us down, and we don't have time for mortal limitations." He began moving again, faster now, his stride eating up the distance with inhuman ease. "Sleep if you can. We won't stop until we reach the border of the night territory." Mira wanted to protest, to insist she could walk on her own, but the truth was, she was exhausted. The blood loss from freeing him, the emotional toll of leaving her grandmother, the terror of what she'd agreed to. It all crashed over her at once. And there was something about being held against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat, that made the bond in her chest purr with contentment. Her traitorous body relaxed into his hold, her head coming to rest against his shoulder. "That's it," Kieran murmured, and she felt his lips brush her hair. "Trust me to keep you safe." She shouldn't trust him. She barely knew him, but her eyes were already closing, exhaustion pulling her under. The last thing she heard before sleep claimed her was his voice, so quiet she might have imagined it. "What have you done to me, little moon-blessed? What spell have you cast?" When Mira woke, it was to the smell of wood smoke and roasting meat. She was lying on soft furs beside a crackling fire, warm despite the winter cold. For a moment, she thought she was home, that everything had been a dream. Then she saw Kieran sitting across the fire from her, his ice-blue eyes reflecting the flames, and reality came crashing back. Good, you're awake. He gestured to a makeshift spit where a rabbit was cooking. Marcus caught breakfast. You need to eat before we continue. Mira sat up slowly, taking in their surroundings. They were in a small clearing, surrounded by ancient pines, their branches heavy with snow. The sky above was the pale gray of pre-dawn, and she could hear water running somewhere nearby. A stream, perhaps. Where are we? Her voice was rough from sleep. About 20 miles from where we started. We crossed into the night territory an hour before dawn. Kieran pulled the rabbit from the fire, tearing off a piece, and handing it to her. Eat. We have another full day of travel ahead. The meat was hot and greasy, and Mira's stomach growled embarrassingly loud. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the smell hit her. She ate quickly, barely tasting it, while Kieran watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You carried me, she said finally, between bites. The whole way? You were exhausted. And you're... He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. You're important. I couldn't risk you injuring yourself stumbling through the dark. Important because of the bond? Important because you saved my life. His voice was firm, and because you're moon-blessed. And yes, because of the bond. All of those things make you valuable, Mira. You need to understand that. In my world, value equals protection, but it also equals danger. There are those who would use you to get to me, or kill you to weaken me. The food turned to ash in her mouth. Your cousin, the one who had you chained. Rowan. Kieran's voice went cold, and she saw his canines lengthen slightly. My father's bastard son. He's wanted my throne since we were children. He's clever, patient, and utterly ruthless. The witch he hired to trap me was just his latest attempt. He leaned forward, firelight dancing across his sharp features. He'll know I escaped by now. He'll have felt the bond break when you freed me, and he'll be looking for you. Fear skittered down her spine. Why would he look for me? Because the breaking of blood chains leaves a magical signature. Any witch worth their salt can trace it back to the one who broke them. Kieran's expression was grim. He'll know someone moon-blessed freed me, and he'll want to either recruit you or eliminate you before the bond can fully form. But he doesn't know who I am specifically, right? I'm just some village girl. How would he find? He has witches, Mira. They can scry, can track magical signatures across hundreds of miles. The mark I put on you will help shield you, but it's not foolproof. He stood, moving around the fire to crouch beside her, which is why we need to reach my stronghold as quickly as possible. Once we're behind my wards, you'll be safe. I promise you that. Mira wanted to believe him, but promises seemed like fragile things in the face of witches and rival alpha kings. Tell me about him, she said quietly. About Rowan. If I'm going to be thrown into the middle of your war, I need to understand what we're facing. Kieran was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant. When he finally spoke, his voice carried centuries of pain. My father was a great king, strong, fair, beloved by his people. But he had one weakness. He couldn't resist a beautiful face. My mother was his true mate, his queen, but there were others. Many others. He looked at her, and she saw old hurt in his eyes. Rowan's mother was a wolf from a minor pack. She seduced my father during one of his wanderings. When she became pregnant, she tried to claim the child was legitimate, that my father had promised her the throne. But he hadn't? No. He loved my mother, even if he couldn't stay faithful to her. When Rowan was born, my father acknowledged him as a son, but made it clear he would never be heir. The throne would pass to me, his legitimate son with his true mate. Kieran's hands clenched into fists. Rowan's mother filled him with poison from the day he was born, told him he was cheated, that he deserved the crown, that I was the bastard in truth, and he was the rightful king. That's horrible, Mira breathed. It shaped him into what he is. A man who believes he's been wronged, who feels entitled to something he never had a right to claim. Kieran's voice was bitter. When my father died 20 years ago, Rowan made his first attempt on my life. I was young, barely grown into my power. He nearly succeeded. Since then, it's been an endless game of cat and mouse. He tries to kill me or undermine my rule. I survive and punish his conspirators. Over and over, for 2 decades. Why don't you just kill him? The words felt wrong in her mouth, but she needed to understand. Because he's family. Because despite everything, he's my brother. Kieran's laugh was hollow. Foolish, isn't it? He wouldn't hesitate to kill me, but I can't quite bring myself to end him. So instead, I exile him. I strip him of titles and lands, and he just comes back stronger, with new allies and new schemes. That's not foolish, Mira said softly. That's mercy. That's being better than he is. Kieran stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Is that what you think? That I'm merciful? I think you're someone who was trapped and tortured, and the first thing you did when freed was offer to save my grandmother. So yes, I think you're capable of mercy. He reached out slowly, his hand cupping her cheek with that same gentle touch that seemed at odds with his dangerous nature. You see things in me that no one else does, little savior. I'm not sure if that makes you wise or dangerously naive. Maybe both, she whispered, unable to look away from those piercing blue eyes. The moment stretched between them, heavy with something Mira didn't have words for. Then Marcus crashed through the underbrush in human form, already talking. We have a problem. The older wolf's expression was tight. I found tracks half a mile south. 4 wolves, traveling fast. They're following our trail. Kieran was on his feet instantly, all softness gone. Has to be. They're moving with purpose, not hunting randomly. Marcus looked at Mira apologetically. They're maybe 2 hours behind us, less if they push hard. Then we push harder. Kieran held out his hand to Mira. Can you run? She thought of her burning legs, her exhausted body. Then she thought of 4 enemy wolves catching up to them, of what they would do to her to weaken Kieran. I can run, she said, taking his hand. Good girl. He pulled her to her feet, and she saw pride flash across his face. Marcus, take point. I'll carry her until we reach the river crossing. Once we're over the water, their tracking will be disrupted. What about after the river? Mira asked as Kieran swung her up into his arms again. After the river, we're only 6 hours from my stronghold. If we can make it there, we're safe. His grip tightened on her. Hold on tight, little savior. This is going to be rough. They ran. Not the steady jog from the night before, but an all-out sprint that made trees blur past and wind whip Mira's hair. Kieran moved like liquid darkness, leaping over fallen logs and dodging between trees with impossible grace. Marcus raced ahead in wolf form, his howl echoing through the forest, a warning to any who might hear. Mira clung to Kieran's neck, her face buried against his shoulder, feeling every powerful stride. The bond in her chest thrummed with urgency, with the need to escape, to survive. They're gaining, Kieran growled, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. I can smell them. Marcus.
I see it.
Marcus's voice was strained. The river's just ahead, 200 yards. Mira risked a glance behind them, and immediately wished she hadn't. Through the trees, she could see shapes moving. Massive wolves with fur as red as blood, their eyes glowing amber in the weak morning light. They were close. Too close. Kieran. I know. Hold your breath. What? She didn't get to finish the question. They burst from the tree line and Kieran didn't slow, didn't hesitate. He launched them both off the riverbank into ice-cold water that stole Mira's breath and made her muscles seize. The current was vicious, pulling them downstream, but Kieran's arm was like iron around her waist. She felt him kick, propelling them toward the far shore even as the water tried to drag them under. Behind them, howls of frustration echoed. The red wolves had reached the bank but weren't following. Water would wash away their tracking scent, and crossing would leave them vulnerable. They'd won. For now. Kieran dragged them onto the far shore, both of them gasping and shivering. Mira's teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue, tasting copper. Freezing, she managed. I know. I'm sorry. Kieran was already stripping off his soaked shirt, and for a moment Mira was too stunned by the sight of his scarred, perfect chest to care about the cold. Marcus, we need fire. Now. On it. The older wolf was already gathering dry wood from beneath the dense pines that lined this side of the river. You. Kieran turned to Mira, his hands already working at the laces of her soaked dress. These wet clothes will kill you faster than Rowan's wolves. Get them off. Hi. Her face flamed. I can't. You'll die of cold if you don't. His voice was firm, but not unkind. I've seen naked women before. Mira, your modesty is not worth your life. He was right, and she hated it. With numb fingers, she peeled off her dress and undergarments, leaving her in nothing but her chemise, which clung to her like a second skin. Kieran immediately wrapped her in his own dry cloak that had somehow stayed waterproof in his pack, then pulled her against his chest. Body heat, he explained, though his voice was rougher than before, until Marcus gets that fire going. Mira should have been embarrassed, should have protested, but she was so cold, and Kieran was so warm, and the bond was singing with satisfaction at their closeness. She let herself lean into him, let herself accept comfort from this dangerous, complicated man who had somehow become her protector. Thank you, she whispered against his chest, for keeping me safe. His arms tightened around her. Always, little savior. I'll always keep you safe. And despite everything, despite the danger, despite the bond she hadn't chosen, despite the life she'd left behind, Mira found herself believing him. Chapter 5. The Court of Night and Fang. By the time they reached Kieran's stronghold, the sun was setting again, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Mira had been walking on her own for the last few hours, her dress mostly dry from the fire Marcus had built, though she still wore Kieran's cloak wrapped around her shoulders. It smelled like him, pine and night air, and something wild she couldn't name, and the bond hummed with contentment every time she breathed it in. There, Kieran said, pointing through the trees, the Shadow Peak fortress. Mira's breath caught. She'd expected something dark and foreboding, a castle of black stone and sharp edges. Instead, what rose before them was something out of a dream. The fortress was carved into the side of a mountain, its towers reaching toward the darkening sky like fingers. But it wasn't built of stone, or at least not ordinary stone. The walls gleamed like obsidian, shot through with veins of silver that caught the dying light, and made the entire structure seem to pulse with inner fire. It's beautiful, she breathed. It's home. There was something in Kieran's voice, relief, longing, pain. I've been gone 3 weeks. They'll have assumed me dead by now. They? Mira asked. My court, my pack, the wolves who swore loyalty to me, and whom I failed by letting myself be captured. His jaw tightened. They'll be preparing for war. Rowan will have made his move by now, claimed my throne was forfeit. But you're alive, Mira pointed out. You came back. Doesn't that make everything complicated? Marcus spoke for the first time in hours. In wolf society, a king who can be captured is seen as weak. Kieran will have to prove his strength all over again, convince his pack that he's still worthy of leading them. That's barbaric, Mira said flatly. Kieran's smile was grim. Welcome to my world, little savior, where mercy is weakness, and compassion is a luxury only the strong can afford. They approached the main gates, massive things of silver-veined wood that could probably stop a battering ram. As they drew close, Mira saw figures moving on the battlements, wolves in human form, armed with bows and blades, that gleamed with the same silver as the fortress walls. Who approaches Shadow Peak? A voice called down, hard and suspicious. Your king, Kieran replied, his voice carrying power that made Mira's bones vibrate. Kieran Nightshade, Alpha of the Night Territory, returned from exile and very much alive. There was a long, shocked silence. Then chaos erupted. The gates flew open, and wolves poured out, dozens of them, shifting between human and animal forms in their excitement. They surrounded Kieran, not touching but close, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of joy and relief and disbelief. "My king, you're alive, we thought," Rowan said. "How did you escape?" Kieran held up a hand, and silence fell instantly. The display of authority made Mira shiver. This was what an alpha king looked like in his element, not the injured wolf she'd freed, not the man who'd held her gently in the cold. This was a ruler, powerful and absolute. "I escaped because I was freed." Kieran's hand found Mira's, pulling her forward into the circle of wolves. "This woman, Mira of Thornwick, broke the chains that bound me and saved my life. She is moon-blessed, and she is under my protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me with their life." The wolf's eyes fixed on Mira, and she fought the urge to hide behind Kieran. She could see the mark on her forehead glowing faintly in their vision. Their eyes widened when they saw it, and several dropped to one knee. "Moon-blessed," someone whispered. "The prophecy." "Enough." Kieran's voice cracked like a whip. "We'll discuss prophecies later. Right now, I need a full report. Where is Rowan? What has he done in my absence?" An older woman stepped forward, her silver hair braided with beads that clicked as she moved. She wore the robes of someone important, a counselor, perhaps, or an elder. Her eyes, sharp as knives, fixed on Kieran with an expression that was equal parts relief and frustration. "Rowan declared you dead 5 days ago," she said without preamble. "He claimed the throne and has been systematically removing anyone loyal to you from positions of power. He's executing dissidents in the public square, calling them traitors to the rightful king." Her gaze slid to Mira, assessing. "And who is this, truly?" "Lady Helena. Meet Mira, the woman who will help me reclaim my throne." Kieran's hand tightened on Mira's. "And who will stand beside me as my mate." The words sent shockwaves through the assembled wolves. Mira felt her face burn even as the bond in her chest sang with possessive satisfaction. "Mate?" Helena's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "My king, you've been gone 3 weeks and you return with a mate? A human mate." Her tone suggested this was somewhere between scandalous and insane. "A moon-blessed mate," Kieran corrected coldly. "One whose magic will counter Rowan's witch allies. One whose presence at my side makes me stronger, not weaker. Do you challenge my choice, Helena?" The older woman held his gaze for a long moment, then slowly shook her head. "No, my king. If you claim her as mate, then she is Pack. I will protect her as I would protect you." "Good." Kieran's voice softened slightly. "Because I'm going to need all the loyalty I can get. Rowan has had time to consolidate power. This won't be a simple matter of walking back in and reclaiming the throne." "No," Helena agreed. "It will require strategy, planning, and probably a good deal of bloodshed." She gestured toward the fortress. "Come, you both must be exhausted. We'll convene the War Council at dawn. But tonight, you should rest. Recover your strength. If you're hooked on Mira's journey from village healer to Alpha Queen, don't miss what happens next. Subscribe and join thousands who can't get enough of this story. The interior of Shadowpeak Fortress was even more breathtaking than the exterior. The walls glowed with that same inner light, and Mira realized the silver veins weren't just decorative. They were magical, pulsing with protective wards that made her moon-blessed senses tingle. Kieran led her through corridors that seemed carved from shadow and starlight, past wolves who stopped and stared, whispering behind their hands. She caught fragments of their words: mate, moon-blessed, prophecy, hope. But Kieran kept moving, his pace swift and purposeful. Finally, they reached a set of double doors carved with wolves mid-hunt. Kieran pushed them open to reveal chambers that took Mira's breath away. The room was massive, easily the size of her entire cottage. A fire burned in a hearth, big enough to stand in, casting dancing shadows across walls, hung with tapestries, depicting wolf hunts and battles. Furs covered the floor, soft and thick, and at the far end of the room stood the largest bed Mira had ever seen, piled high with blankets and pillows. "These are my private chambers," Kieran said, closing the doors behind them. No one enters without permission. You'll be safe here. Mira turned to face him, reality crashing down. You said, mate, out there to your people. You told them I was your mate. I did. His expression was unreadable. But we agreed. You said it was pretend. Just for show. Just until you reclaimed your throne. I lied. The words were simple, stark. Or rather, I told myself it was pretend because the truth was too complicated. But the bond doesn't lie, Mira. You felt it the moment our hands touched. It's been growing stronger every hour we spend together. No. She backed away from him. No, you promised. You gave me your oath that I could go home when this was done. You swore. And I will keep that oath. Kieran moved toward her slowly, hands raised like he was approaching a skittish animal. If, when my throne is secure, you truly wish to leave, I will let you go. I will break the bond myself if I must, even though it will feel like tearing out my own heart. But I will not force you to stay. Then why tell them I'm your mate? Tears burned in Mira's eyes. Why make it real? Because it protects you. His voice was raw, honest. A woman under my protection is valuable. A woman who is my mate is sacred. No one in my court will dare touch you. No one will question your place at my side. And when we face Rowan, when his witches try their magic, the mate bond will shield you better than any spell I could cast. You're using me. The accusation hung in the air between them. Yes, he didn't deny it. I'm using your magic, your moon-blessed nature, your bond to me. I'm using everything you are to help me win, but that doesn't mean I'm lying about what I feel. Mira's breath caught. What you feel. Kieran closed the distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her face with heartbreaking gentleness. You saved me, Mira, not just from the chains, but from 3 weeks of believing I would die alone in that clearing, failed and forgotten. You gave your blood freely, asked for nothing in return, and when I offered you power, you asked only to save your grandmother. You're brave and compassionate, and impossibly stubborn, and every moment I spend with you makes the bond pull tighter. The bond, she whispered. Not you, just the magic. I don't know anymore. His thumb brushed across her cheek, catching a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Maybe it started as just the bond. Maybe that's all it is. But it doesn't feel like magic, Mira. It feels like recognition. Like I've been waiting my whole life for someone to see me as something other than a king or a killer, and you did it without even trying. She wanted to pull away, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she didn't see anything special in him, that this was all just manipulation and politics. But it would be a lie. She'd seen his mercy when he refused to kill his traitorous brother. She'd felt his gentleness when he held her in the cold water. She'd heard the pain in his voice when he spoke of his father's betrayal. She'd seen him, really seen him, and the bond had nothing to do with it. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Of this, of you, of what I'm becoming. I know. He pressed his forehead to hers, and the bond sang between them. I'm scared too. I've been alone for so long, trusted so few, and now there's you, this impossible girl who broke into my life and my heart without permission. You terrify me, Mira, because losing you would destroy me in ways Rowan's chains never could. Then don't make me stay, she pleaded. Don't trap me the way you were trapped. I won't. His oath rang with truth that resonated in her bones. I swear it on my crown, on my life, on everything I am. When this is over, the choice will be yours, stay or go. But until then, his lips brushed her forehead, feather light. Until then, let me keep you safe. Let me pretend, just for a while, that I'm worthy of the gift you've given me. Mira closed her eyes, feeling tears slip free. She should say no, should demand he take her home right now, should run as far and fast as she could from this beautiful broken Alpha King and the bond that was wrapping around her heart. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Okay." Kieran exhaled, and she felt the tension leave his body. "Thank you," he murmured, against her hair. "I'll make you a promise in return. I'll teach you about my world. I'll give you power and knowledge so you're never helpless. And I'll court you properly, the way a mate deserves to be courted, not just claimed and marked like property. Despite everything, Mira felt a laugh bubble up. Court me? We're pretending to be mates. Isn't courting a bit redundant? His smile against her skin was wicked. Who said anything about pretending? He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were blazing with that inner fire. I'm going to win your heart, little savior. Not through magic, or bonds, or obligation, but honestly, genuinely, until you choose to stay not because you have to, but because you want to. That's ambitious, she managed, her heart hammering. I'm an alpha king, he replied with devastating confidence. Ambitious is what I do. Before she could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. Kieran growled low in his throat, but released Mira and called, Enter. Helena stepped inside, carrying a tray laden with food and a bundle of what looked like clothes. Forgive the intrusion, my king, but the girl needs to eat and dress properly if she's to be presented to the pack tomorrow. Her sharp eyes fixed on Mira, with something that might have been approval. You did well today, child, keeping pace with an alpha king over rough terrain. Most humans wouldn't have made it past the first hour. I'm tougher than I look, Mira said, lifting her chin. Helena's smile was genuine. Good. You'll need to be. This court eats the weak alive. She set down the tray and clothes. I've brought you dinner and appropriate attire for tomorrow's council. The blue dress should fit. It belonged to Kieran's mother. She was small like you. Kieran stiffened. My mother's clothes? She would have wanted her son's mate to have them. Helena's voice was gentle. She would have liked this one, I think. She always said you needed someone brave enough to tell you when you were being an idiot. Despite the tension, Mira felt herself smile. I can do that. I'm sure you can. Helena moved toward the door, then paused. A word of warning, child. Not everyone in this court will welcome you. There are those who've spent years vying to be at the king's side. They'll see you as a threat, an outsider who stole what they believe should be theirs. Watch your back. Trust no one except those who've proven themselves. Comforting, Mira said dryly. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to keep you alive. Helena's expression was fierce, which I will do, because my king has claimed you. But you need to be smart, girl. This isn't your village. This is a court of predators. Act accordingly. With that cheerful advice, she swept from the room, leaving Mira and Kieran alone once more. She's intense, Mira observed. She's been my father's advisor and mine for 40 years. She's seen more court intrigue than anyone alive. Kieran moved to the tray, uncovering dishes that made Mira's stomach growl. And she's right. My court will test you. You need to be ready. Then teach me. Mira joined him by the fire, accepting the plate he offered. You said you'd give me knowledge and power. Start now. Tell me everything I need to know to survive your world. Kieran's smile was approval and admiration mixed. Eat first, then we'll talk strategy. By the time the sun rises, you'll know enough to hold your own against the wolves of my court. And what about against your cousin? Mira asked quietly. Against Rowan and his witches? Against them, Kieran's expression went cold. Dangerous. Against them, you'll have me, and I promise you, little savior, I am far more terrifying than any witch or false king when it comes to protecting what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have worried her. Instead, it made the bond purr with satisfaction, and something deeper, something that felt dangerously like belonging. Mira settled beside the fire with her plate, watching Kieran move through his chambers, with the grace of a predator in his den. Tomorrow she would face a court of wolves, would play the part of an alpha king's mate, would begin a dance of politics and power that could end in triumph or disaster. But tonight, she would learn, she would prepare, and she would decide, once and for all, whether the girl from Thornwick Village could become the woman strong enough to stand beside a king. The answer, she was beginning to realize, might already be written in the silver mark on her forehead, and the bond that sang stronger with every passing hour. She'd freed a wolf from chains. Now she had to figure out if she'd freed herself as well, or simply exchanged one prison for another. Chapter 6. The Council of Wolves. Dawn came too quickly. Mira woke tangled in furs beside the dying fire, her body aching from 2 days of hard travel. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw Kieran standing by the window, silhouetted against the rising sun, and everything came rushing back. The Alpha King, the bond, the court that awaited her. "You're awake." He turned, and she saw he was dressed in formal attire, black leather and dark silk that made him look every inch the dangerous ruler he was. "Good. We don't have much time. The council convenes in an hour." Mira sat up, pushing hair out of her face. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." "You're not." His honesty was brutal but not unkind. "But you will be. Come, let's get you dressed and prepared." The dress Helena had brought was breathtaking, deep sapphire blue that seemed to shift between shades as Mira moved, with silver embroidery at the hem and sleeves that matched the veins in the fortress walls. It fit perfectly, hugging her curves before flowing to the floor in elegant folds. "My mother was beautiful," Kieran said quietly, as he fastened the delicate clasps at her back. His fingers were surprisingly gentle. "But I think you wear her dress better than she ever did." Mira met his eyes in the mirror. "You don't have to say things like that." "I'm not saying it because I have to." His hand settled on her shoulders, and she felt the warmth of him seep through the fabric. "I'm saying it because it's true. You are beautiful, Mira. Brave and beautiful and far too good for a king like me." Before she could respond, he reached into a carved box on the dresser and pulled out something that made her breath catch. A circlet of silver, delicate and intricate, with a single moonstone at its center that glowed with inner light. "This was also my mother's," he said. "It responds to moon-blessed magic. When you wear it, everyone will see exactly what you are. There will be no doubt, no question of your legitimacy at my side." He placed it gently on her head, and the moment the silver touched her skin, the moonstone flared bright. Power hummed through her, and she saw the mark on her forehead glow in response, connecting with the circlet in a web of silver light. "Perfect," Kieran breathed. "You look like a queen, little savior." "I'm not a queen," Mira protested. "I'm just—" "You're mine." The possessiveness in his voice made her shiver. "And in my world, what's mine is elevated, protected, honored. Today you walk into that council chamber as my mate and my equal. Anyone who challenges that challenges me." He offered his arm, and after only a moment's hesitation, Mira took it. The bond hummed with approval as they left the chambers together, stepping into corridors already bustling with activity. Wolves stopped and stared as they passed. Some dropped to their knees. Others simply watched, with expressions ranging from awe to suspicion to barely concealed hostility. Mira kept her chin high, refusing to show weakness, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. They reached the council chamber, a massive hall, with a table carved from a single piece of black stone. Already seated were perhaps 20 wolves, all in human form, all dressed in formal attire that spoke of wealth and power. Helena was there, along with Marcus, but the rest were strangers, whose eyes tracked Mira with predatory focus. "My king," Helena stood as they entered. "Welcome home." "Thank you, Helena." Kieran moved to the head of the table, pulling out the chair beside his own for Mira before taking his seat. The message was clear. She sat at his right hand, in the position of highest honor. "Let's begin. I want a full accounting of everything that's happened in my absence." For the next hour, Mira listened as the council reported on Rowan's actions. It was worse than she'd imagined. He'd executed 12 wolves loyal to Kieran, imprisoned dozens more, and had declared himself Alpha King, with the backing of 3 major packs, who'd been swayed by his promises of power and territory. He's also fortified the capital, a grizzled warrior named Theron reported. He has witches maintaining barrier wards. Any attempt to attack directly would be suicide. "Then we don't attack directly." Kieran's voice was cold, calculated. "We undermine him. We remind the packs why they swore loyalty to me in the first place. We make him look weak, unstable, unworthy of the crown he stole. And how do you propose we do that, my king? This came from a younger wolf, beautiful and sharp-eyed, with midnight hair and a dress cut scandalously low. Rowan has spent 3 weeks convincing everyone you were dead. Your sudden return will shake his support, but it won't be enough. The packs respect strength. They need to see you're still the alpha they followed. Lady Cassandra makes a valid point, another counselor added. A show of strength is required. Kieran's smile was all teeth. Then they'll have one. I'll challenge Rowan directly. Single combat for the throne. Winner takes all. The council erupted in protest. Too dangerous. He'll never accept. The witches will interfere. Enough. Kieran's voice cracked like thunder, and silence fell instantly. I am Alpha King. I have faced down challenges from stronger opponents than my bastard cousin. I will not hide behind politics and maneuvering, when direct action will solve the problem. With respect, my king, Helena said carefully, Lady Cassandra is right. The packs need to see your strength, yes, but they also need to see you're still worthy of their loyalty. Perhaps there's a way to demonstrate both, without risking everything on single combat. What do you suggest? Helena's eyes slid to Mira, calculating. The Moon Festival is in 3 days. Every pack from all 5 territories will attend. It's sacred, neutral ground where even Rowan cannot violate the peace. If you were to appear there, with your mate at your side, she smiled slowly, the display would be spectacular. A king returned from death with a moon-blessed mate. It would look like the goddess herself had blessed your union. The prophecy, someone whispered. The old songs speak of it. When the king finds his moon-blessed mate, his power doubles, his reign becomes unshakable. Convenient, Cassandra said dryly, her eyes on Mira with barely disguised dislike, a prophecy that surfaces exactly when needed. How very timely. Careful, Cassandra. Kieran's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. That's my mate, you're questioning. Your queen. She's not queen yet, Cassandra shot back. She hasn't been formally bonded before the packs. For all we know, she's just a pretty human you picked up to serve your political needs. The insult hung in the air like poison. Mira felt every eye turn to her, waiting to see how she would respond. This was a test. She understood that instinctively, show weakness now, and she'd never recover their respect. She stood slowly, and the moonstone in her circlet flared bright. When she spoke, her voice was steady, clear, carrying power she didn't know she possessed. You're right, Lady Cassandra. I'm not queen yet. I'm just a village girl who was foolish enough to free a king from chains that were meant to kill him. Just a human who gave her blood to break magic that would have burned anyone else to ash. Just a moon-blessed who walked into this fortress, knowing full well I'd be tested, doubted, and dismissed by people who think titles matter more than actions. She moved around the table toward Cassandra, and she saw the wolf's eyes widen slightly. But here's what I am. Lady Cassandra, I'm the woman who saved your king when he was dying. I'm the woman whose magic will counter Rowan's witches. And I'm the woman who will stand beside Kieran when he reclaims his throne, whether you approve or not. She stopped directly in front of Cassandra, close enough that the wolf had to look up to meet her eyes. So you can question my title all you want. You can doubt the prophecy, doubt the bond, doubt me. But what you cannot do is insult me in front of this council, without consequences, because like it or not, I am under the protection of your Alpha King, and disrespecting me disrespects him. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, Cassandra's lips curved into a smile that was half respect, half challenge. Well, the wolf said softly, perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye, little human. Moonblessed, Mira corrected coldly. Get it right. Cassandra's laugh was genuine. My apologies. Moonblessed. She inclined her head in a gesture that wasn't quite submission but was close enough. I look forward to seeing what else you're capable of. Mira returned to her seat, her heart pounding, and found Kieran watching her, with an expression that made heat coil in her belly. Pride, hunger, possessiveness, all of it directed at her, with an intensity that stole her breath. As I was saying, Helena continued as if nothing had happened. Though Mira caught the approving glint in her eyes, the Moon Festival would be the perfect venue to announce the king's return and his mate. It's 3 days away, enough time to prepare, but not so long that Rowan can consolidate more power. Agreed. Kieran's hand found Mira's beneath the table, squeezing gently. We'll attend the festival, make the announcement, and if Rowan wants to challenge me there, on sacred ground in front of all the packs, all the better. Let him show his true colors when the goddess herself is watching. There's one complication. Marcus spoke up. The Moon Festival requires certain rituals. For a mating bond to be recognized by the goddess and the packs, it must be consummated under the full moon. Mira's face went hot. Consummated? It's ceremonial, Helena said quickly, seeing Mira's panic. You don't actually have to. That is, there are ways to satisfy the ritual, without literally, she trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Without betting each other in front of the entire gathering, Cassandra supplied helpfully, her eyes glinting with mischief. Though some do prefer the traditional method, very vigorous. That won't be necessary, Kieran said firmly, though his hand tightened on Mira's. We'll perform the blood ritual. It's older, more powerful, and doesn't require public consummation. The blood ritual is binding, my king, Helena warned. Once performed, the mate bond becomes permanent. It cannot be broken except by death. Mira's stomach dropped. Permanent? Kieran turned to her, his eyes searching hers. We don't have to do this. There are other ways to convince the packs. Other strategies. That will take months. We don't have, Mira interrupted, her mind racing, and that will leave you vulnerable to Rowan's attacks. She took a deep breath, fighting down panic. What exactly does this blood ritual involve? Blood mixed beneath the full moon, Helena explained. Words spoken in the old tongue, and a mark, your blood on his skin, his blood on yours, in a place over your hearts. Once the moon witnesses the ritual, the bond becomes unbreakable. Unbreakable. Permanent. Forever tied to an Alpha King, she'd known less than 3 days. Mira looked at Kieran, and saw her own uncertainty reflected in his eyes. But she also saw determination, and something that looked dangerously like hope. If I do this, she said quietly, if I bind myself to you permanently, I need you to swear something to me. Anything, he said without hesitation. Swear you'll never use the bond to control me. Swear that even bound, I'll still have my freedom, my choices, my voice. Swear that I'll be your equal, not your property. The council erupted again. You can't ask an Alpha King to. That's not how mate bonds work. She's human, she doesn't understand. Silence. Kieran's power rolled out like a wave, pressing everyone back into their seats. When he looked at Mira, his expression was fierce, reverent. I swear it, on my crown, on my life, on everything I am and ever will be. You will never be my property. You will be my partner, my equal, my queen in truth, as well as title. The bond will connect us, but it will not control you. Your choices remain your own, always. Even if I choose to leave? The question was barely a whisper. His jaw tightened, and she saw pain flash across his face. Even then, though I pray to every god that listens that you never will. Mira closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. 3 days ago, she'd been a healer's apprentice gathering herbs in the forest. Now she was being asked to bind herself permanently to a king, to perform a ritual that would make her a wolf's mate in the eyes of both magic and society. She should say no, should demand he find another way, should run back to her village and her grandmother and her simple, safe life. But when she opened her eyes and looked at Kieran, really looked at him, she saw more than a king. She saw the man who'd held her gently in the cold river, the man who'd carried her through the forest when she was exhausted, the man who'd given his oath to protect her, and had kept it at every turn. And she felt the bond in her chest, warm and insistent, pulling her toward him with a force that had nothing to do with magic, and everything to do with recognition. Maybe Helena was right. Maybe this was prophecy. Maybe the goddess herself had led Mira into that clearing for exactly this purpose. Or maybe it was just a girl making an impossible choice in impossible circumstances. Either way, the answer was the same. "I'll do it," she said, and watched hope flare in Kieran's eyes like wildfire. 3 days from now, at the Moon Festival, I'll perform the blood ritual and bind myself to you. The council chamber erupted in cheers and howls, but Mira heard none of it. She was too focused on Kieran, on the way he pulled her close and pressed his forehead to hers, on the way the bond sang with joy and rightness. "Thank you," he whispered against her skin. "I swear you won't regret this. I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of the gift you're giving me." "You'd better," she murmured back, trying to sound fierce even as her heart raced, "because if you make me regret this, I'll break more than just your chains." His laugh was warm and genuine, and when he kissed her forehead, right over the mark that bound them, Mira felt something in her chest settle into place. She'd made her choice. In 3 days, she would bind herself to an Alpha King permanently. And somehow, terrifyingly, it felt like coming home. Chapter 7. The Moon Festival. The 3 days before the Moon Festival passed in a blur of preparation, politics, and lessons that made Mira's head spin. Helena had taken charge of her education with the fervor of a general preparing for war. "You need to understand wolf culture," the older woman had said on the first day, spreading maps and genealogy charts across a table in Mira's chambers. "Every pack has its history, its grudges, its alliances. Know them, and you'll never be caught off guard." Mira learned that the 5 territories, Night, Dawn, Twilight, Shadow, and Moon, had been at peace for barely a generation. Before Kieran's father united them, the packs had warred constantly, their conflicts leaving scars that still hadn't fully healed. Kieran's rule had maintained that fragile peace, but Rowan's coup threatened to shatter it. "If the packs lose faith in the crown," Helena explained, "they'll fracture back into independent territories. War will return. Thousands will die." Her sharp eyes fixed on Mira. "That's what's at stake. Not just Kieran's throne, but the lives of everyone in all 5 territories." The weight of it pressed on Mira's shoulders like a physical thing. She wasn't just playing at being a mate. She was helping to prevent a war. Cassandra, surprisingly, became one of her fiercest tutors. The beautiful wolf had a sharp mind and sharper tongue, and she drilled Mira relentlessly on court etiquette and social warfare. "Never show weakness," Cassandra instructed during a particularly brutal lesson on the 2nd day. "If someone insults you, you smile and destroy them with words so cutting they'll bleed for days." Like this, she demonstrated with a fictional scenario that left Mira both horrified and impressed. "Why are you helping me?" Mira asked finally. "You made it clear you don't think I belong here." Cassandra's smile was enigmatic. "I don't, but Kieran does, and he's my king. If he's chosen you as mate, then you need to be strong enough to stand beside him. Consider this my gift to him, making sure his human doesn't embarrass him in front of the other packs." "Moon blessed," Mira corrected with a smile. "Get it right." Cassandra's laugh was warm. "You're learning. Good." But it was the nights that changed everything. Each evening, after the lessons and preparations were done, Kieran would come to her chambers. Not to seduce or claim, he'd kept his word about courting her properly. Instead, they would sit by the fire and talk, sharing pieces of themselves that had nothing to do with crowns or bonds or destiny. He told her about his childhood, about a mother who'd loved him fiercely, and a father who'd been distant but fair, about the weight of knowing from birth that he would one day rule, and the loneliness that came with power. "Everyone wants something from a king," he'd said on the 2nd night, his voice soft in the firelight. "Loyalty, favors, justice, vengeance, but no one just wants me, the person behind the crown, until you. I want plenty from you," Mira had teased, trying to lighten the mood. "I want you to win. I want you to keep your promises. I want you to not get me killed. But you don't want me for my crown. You'd have been happier if I'd just been a wolf, wouldn't you? No politics, no danger. just a man. She'd thought about lying, but the bond made dishonesty feel wrong. Yes, she'd admitted, but you're not just a man. You're a king, and I'm learning that maybe that's not such a terrible thing. His smile had been brilliant, hopeful, and he'd reached for her hand with a gentleness that made her heart ache. She told him about her life too, about her grandmother's wisdom, about the children she'd helped heal, about the quiet joy she found in making people better, about the loneliness of being different in a small village, of having magic that set her apart even as it drew people to her for help. I always felt like I was waiting, she'd confessed on the third night, the eve of the festival, like my life was supposed to be more than herbs and broken bones, but I didn't know what, and then I found you in that clearing, and everything changed. Regret it? His voice had been carefully neutral, but she'd felt the tension in him through the bond. Ask me again after the festival, she'd replied, not quite ready to admit the truth, that no, she didn't regret it, that these 3 days had been terrifying and overwhelming, and more alive than anything she'd experienced in her entire life. That she was falling for him, bond or no bond, magic or no magic. Now, standing in her chambers on the morning of the festival, Mira stared at her reflection and barely recognized herself. The dress they'd prepared for her was stunning, white as moonlight, with silver embroidery that seemed to move and shift, like living things. It left her shoulders bare, the better to show the mark that would be placed there during the ritual. Her hair had been woven with silver threads, and tiny crystals that caught the light like stars. The circlet sat on her head, and the moonstone at its center pulsed with power that resonated with her moon-blessed magic. She looked like something out of a fairy tale, beautiful, ethereal, untouchable. She looked like a queen. Magnificent. Kieran's voice came from the doorway, and Mira turned to find him watching her, with an expression that made heat pool in her belly. He was dressed in formal attire, black and silver that matched her dress, his dark hair loose around his shoulders. He looked every inch the Alpha King, powerful and dangerous and devastatingly handsome. You don't look so bad yourself, she managed, her voice embarrassingly breathless. He crossed to her, moving with that liquid grace that marked him as predator, and took her hands in his. Are you ready for this? Truly? Because if you're not, we can still... I'm ready. She squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his warmth. I'm terrified, but I'm ready. Good. He lifted one hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent shivers up her arm. Because you're going to be brilliant. The Pax will see you, and understand why the goddess chose you for me. They'll see your strength, your courage, your light, and they'll know that I am the luckiest bastard alive to have earned your trust. You haven't earned it yet, Mira teased, trying to calm her racing heart. You've rented it, with an option to buy if you behave. His laugh was rich and warm. Then I'll have to be on my best behavior. He offered his arm. Come. It's time to show the 5 territories what a real queen looks like. The Moon Festival was held in neutral territory, a massive clearing deep in the forest, where the trees formed a natural amphitheater. By the time Kieran and Mira arrived, hundreds of wolves had already gathered, their conversations dying to shocked silence, as the Alpha King stepped into the clearing with his mate at his side. Mira felt every eye turn to them, felt the weight of their stares like physical pressure, but she kept her chin high, her hand steady on Kieran's arm, and walked like she belonged there. Because she did. She'd earned her place through blood and choice, and courage. No one could take that from her. The clearing was breathtaking. Torches burned in a great circle, their light reflecting off decorations of silver and crystal. At the center stood an ancient altar carved with runes that made Mira's moon-blessed senses tingle. The full moon hung overhead, massive and silver, bathing everything in ethereal light. And standing by the altar, dressed in stolen finery with a crown of thorns on his head, was Rowan. Mira recognized him instantly, even though she'd never seen him before. He looked like Kieran, same dark hair, same sharp features, same predatory grace. But where Kieran's eyes were ice blue and honest, Rowan's were amber and cunning. And where Kieran carried power with natural authority, Rowan wore it like stolen clothes that didn't quite fit. Well, well, Rowan's voice carried across the clearing, smooth and mocking. My dear brother, I'd heard rumors of your survival, but I confess I didn't believe them. After all, the chains that bound you were supposed to be unbreakable. Supposed to be, Kieran replied calmly, leading Mira forward. But you underestimated one crucial factor. And what's that? The power of a moon-blessed woman, with a good heart and steady hands. Kieran pulled Mira forward slightly, presenting her to the assembled Pax. Allow me to introduce Mira of Thornwick, my mate and your future queen. She broke your chains, cousin. She freed me when your witches swore it was impossible. Rowan's eyes fixed on Mira, and she fought not to flinch at the calculation she saw there. Moon-blessed. How convenient. And how quickly you've bound her to you. One might think you used the bond to enslave an innocent girl to serve your political needs. One would be wrong. Mira's voice rang clear in the silence. I chose to free him. I chose to come here, and I chose to stand at his side. No magic forced my hand except the simple truth that your chains were torture and he was suffering. How noble. Rowan's smile didn't reach his eyes. And I suppose you've also chosen to perform the blood ritual tonight? To bind yourself permanently to a king who will use you and discard you the moment you're no longer useful. I've chosen to bind myself to a man who gave me his oath to protect me and has kept it at every turn. Mira stepped forward, leaving Kieran's side to face Rowan directly. A man who could have forced me, but chose to court me instead. A man who values mercy and honor over cruelty and ambition. Can you say the same, false king? The insult landed like a slap. Rowan's eyes flashed amber gold, his wolf rising to the surface. You dare. I dare a lot of things. Mira's voice was steady even as her heart hammered, including calling out a pretender when I see one. You wear a stolen crown, Rowan Nightshade. It doesn't fit, and everyone here knows it. The assembled wolves murmured, and Mira saw approval on some faces, shock on others. Rowan's jaw tightened with barely controlled rage. Careful, little human, he said softly, dangerously. You're in a clearing full of wolves. One word from me, and they'll tear you apart. One word from you, and you'll start a civil war. Kieran was suddenly at Mira's side, his power rolling out like a wave. This is sacred ground, cousin. Neutral territory, where violence is forbidden by the goddess herself. You know the laws as well as I do. Anyone who sheds blood here tonight will be cursed. Then perhaps, a new voice interrupted. Cool and feminine, we should let the goddess decide who's telling the truth. An old woman stepped from the crowd, ancient, bent with age. But her eyes were sharp as knives. She wore robes of undyed wool, and power radiated from her like heat from a forge. The gathered wolves fell silent, many dropping to their knees. The crone, Helena whispered beside Mira. She's the oldest of our kind. She interprets the goddess's will. The crone moved to the altar with slow, deliberate steps, her gaze sweeping over Kieran, then Rowan, then finally settling on Mira. A moon blessed in our midst. How rare, how precious. She crooked a finger. Come here, child. Let me see you properly. Mira approached on shaking legs, feeling the weight of the crone's attention like a physical thing. The old woman reached out with gnarled hands, touching Mira's forehead where the mark glowed, then her chest where the bond pulsed. Yes, the crone murmured. Yes, you're the one. The songs spoke true. The king's salvation wears a human face and carries the moon's blessing. Her eyes lifted to meet Mira's. Do you come to this ritual willingly, child, with full knowledge of what it means? No coercion, no force, no magic compelling your choice. I come willingly, Mira said, her voice strong. I choose this bond, this man, this fate, of my own free will. The crone's smile was approving. Then the goddess blesses your union, and as for you, she turned to Rowan, and her expression went cold. You who wear a stolen crown and speak of enslavement, you who hired witches to torture your own blood and claim what was never yours. The goddess sees your treachery, Rowan Nightshade. She judges you unworthy. You can't. Rowan started. I speak with the goddess's voice, the crone interrupted, her power making the air itself tremble, and she says this. Let the true king perform the blood ritual with his chosen mate. Let the bond be witnessed and blessed, and let any who challenge it face her wrath. Silence. Absolute, total silence. Then, slowly wolves began to kneel. First one, then 10, then dozens, until nearly everyone in the clearing was on their knees, heads bowed toward Kieran and Mira. Rowan stood alone, his face twisted with rage. For a moment, Mira thought he might attack anyway. Goddess's curse be damned. But then he saw the overwhelming display of loyalty, saw that he'd lost before the battle had even begun, and something in him crumbled. This isn't over, he snarled at Kieran. You may have won tonight, but I'll return. And next time your little moon-blessed won't be enough to save you. Then next time, I'll be ready. Kieran's voice was cold, final. Now get out of my sight, before I forget. We're on sacred ground. Rowan fled, and several wolves went with him, his loyalists, those too committed to his cause to switch sides. But the vast majority remained, their allegiance clear. The crone gestured to the altar. Come, young king. Come, moon-blessed child. Let us complete the ritual, and bind you in the goddess's sight. Mira's heart hammered as Kieran led her to the altar. This was it, the point of no return. Once they performed this ritual, the bond would be permanent, unbreakable except by death. She looked at Kieran, and saw her own fear reflected in his eyes, but also determination, and something deeper, something that looked like love. Last chance, he whispered. You can still walk away. So can you? She whispered back. His smile was crooked, vulnerable. Not anymore. I think I fell for you the moment you told me to run before whoever chained me came back. You saved me, and your first thought was for my safety, not reward. How could I not love that? Love. The word hung between them, precious and terrifying. Ask me again, Mira said softly, after the ritual, when we're bound and it's too late to take it back. Ask me then if I regret this. I will, he promised. Every day for the rest of our lives I'll ask, and every day I'll work to make sure your answer is no. The crone handed them each a silver blade. Your blood, mixed beneath the moon. Your hearts, marked with each other's essence. Your words, spoken in the old tongue. Are you ready? Mira took the blade with steady hands. Yes. Then begin. Kieran cut his palm first, letting blood well up dark and rich. Mira did the same, her moon-blessed magic making the blood shimmer silver in the moonlight. They pressed their palms together, and power exploded between them, not painful, but overwhelming, like lightning and starlight, and every beautiful, terrifying thing in the world, condensed into a single moment. Repeat after me, the crone instructed, and began speaking in a language that sounded like wind through trees, like water over stones, like the first words ever spoken. Kieran repeated the phrases, his eyes never leaving Mira's. She echoed them, feeling each word settle into her bones, into the bond, weaving them together with threads that could never be broken. When the words were done, Kieran took his blood-marked hand and pressed it over Mira's heart, leaving a perfect handprint on her bare shoulder. She did the same to him, her smaller hand marking his chest. The moment their marks settled, the moon overhead flared brilliant white, so bright the entire clearing was illuminated like day. The bond in Mira's chest exploded with sensation, joy and recognition and completion and home, all of it crashing over her at once. She felt Kieran in ways she'd never imagined possible, his emotions, his thoughts, his very essence intertwined with hers. She felt his love for her, fierce and protective and genuine. She felt his fear that she would regret this, his determination to prove himself worthy, his absolute certainty that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. And she felt her own heart responding, admitting what she'd been too afraid to acknowledge, that she loved him too, that somewhere between the chains in the court and the 3 nights by the fire, She'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with an Alpha King. The light faded, and Mira found herself in Kieran's arms, both of them shaking with the force of what had just happened. "It's done," the crone announced, satisfaction rich in her voice. "The bond is complete. Witness, all you gathered here, Kieran Nightshade, Alpha King of the Night Territory, and Mira of Thornwick, moon-blessed and true queen, are mated in the eyes of the goddess and the pack. Let no one separate what the moon has joined." The clearing erupted in howls, hundreds of wolves celebrating, the sound echoing through the forest like thunder. Kieran pulled back just enough to see Mira's face, his eyes searching hers. "Do you regret it?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Tell me true, Mira. Now that it's done, now that you're bound to me forever, do you regret it?" She should. She should regret everything. The choice, the bond, the impossible situation she'd fallen into. But when she looked into his eyes, and felt the bond singing between them, felt his love and her own answering it, she found only one truth. "No," she whispered, and watched joy transform his face. "I don't regret it. I choose you, Kieran. Now and always. Bond or no bond. Magic or no magic. I choose you." His kiss was everything, desperate and gentle, claiming and giving, a promise sealed in moonlight and magic. The bond flared brilliant between them, and Mira felt herself falling into it, into him, into a future she'd never imagined, but suddenly couldn't live without. When they finally broke apart, the crone was smiling, and the assembled packs were still howling their approval. "Welcome home, my queen," Kieran murmured against her lips. "Welcome home." And for the first time since she'd freed a wolf from chains in a cursed forest, Mira felt like she truly had found home, not a place, but a person, not safety, but partnership, not a cage, but wings. She'd saved a king, and in return he'd given her a crown, a kingdom, and a love that would last forever. The girl from Thornwick Village had become a queen, and the story was only beginning. Chapter 8. The Queen's Choice. The week following the Moon Festival passed in a whirlwind of change that left Mira's head spinning. Rowan had fled to the Shadow Territory, taking his remaining loyalists with him. Without the blessing of the crone, or the support of the major packs, his claim to the throne had crumbled like sand. Kieran's rule was secure, more than secure. The display at the festival, the goddess's clear favor, the visible bond between king and moon-blessed queen, had solidified his power in ways that 20 years of competent rule never had. "You've made me unshakable," Kieran had told her the morning after the ritual, as they lay tangled together in his massive bed, the bond still humming with newness between them. "The packs see us, and see the goddess's will made manifest. They won't challenge me now, not with you at my side. So I'm a political tool after all," Mira had teased, though there was no heat in it. "You're my heart," he'd corrected, pulling her closer. "The politics are just a convenient bonus." Now, a week later, Mira stood in the throne room of Shadow Peak Fortress, watching as representatives from all 5 territories came to formally pledge their loyalty to their king and queen. It should have been tedious, hours of ceremony and formal words, but Mira found herself fascinated by the process, by the intricate dance of pack politics and territorial alliances. "The Dawn Territory pledges 10,000 wolves to your banner, my king," Lord Aldrich said, kneeling before the throne. He was ancient, his hair more silver than black, but his eyes were sharp, "and we offer our congratulations on your mating. The goddess has blessed your union, and we are honored to serve." "Rise, Lord Aldrich." Kieran's voice carried the easy authority of someone born to rule. "Your loyalty is noted and valued. The Dawn Territory will always have a place of honor in my court." Aldrich stood, then turned to Mira with something like wonder in his eyes. "My queen, if I may, there's a girl in my pack, barely 15, who shows signs of being moon-blessed. She's untrained, frightened of her own power. Would you consider taking her as an apprentice, teaching her what you know?" Mira blinked, surprised. In the chaos of the past week, She hadn't thought beyond surviving each day, but the idea of teaching, of helping another girl understand the magic that set her apart, that sparked something in her chest that had nothing to do with the bond. "I would be honored," she said, and meant it. "Send her to me. I'll teach her everything I can." Aldrich's smile was brilliant. "Thank you, my queen. You've given her hope she thought was lost." As he withdrew, Mira felt Kieran's satisfaction through the bond. When she glanced at him, he was smiling with unconcealed pride. "You're a natural at this," his voice whispered in her mind. Another gift of the completed bond, the ability to speak without words. At what? Being stared at and given impossible responsibilities, she thought back wryly. At being queen, at seeing what people need and giving it to them, at making them love you without even trying. The ceremony continued for hours, pack after pack pledging loyalty, until finally the last representative had withdrawn, and Mira could escape the throne room's formality. She made her way to the chambers she now officially shared with Kieran, grateful for the privacy. She found Helena waiting for her, along with Marcus, and surprisingly, Cassandra. "We need to talk," Helena said without preamble. "About Rowan." Mira's stomach dropped. She'd known this was coming. He's not going to just disappear, is he? No. Marcus's expression was grim. "We have reports that he's gathering forces in the Shadow Territory, wolves who are dissatisfied with Kieran's rule, those who want war and conquest rather than peace." "How many?" Mira asked. "Maybe 2,000, Cassandra supplied. Not enough to challenge Kieran directly, but enough to cause problems. Raids on border villages, attacks on supply lines. He's going to try to bleed the kingdom slowly, make Kieran look weak. Then we stop him." Mira's voice was harder than she expected. "We can't let him terrorize innocent people just because he's angry about losing." "Agreed," Helena said. "But the question is, how? Kieran wants to lead an army into the Shadow Territory and end this once and for all, but that means war, and war means casualties. Thousands could die. There has to be another way," Mira insisted. "Some way to stop Rowan without starting a war that will kill people on both sides." The three wolves exchanged glances, and Mira felt like she was missing something. "There is one way," Cassandra said slowly. "But it's dangerous, and Kieran will never agree to it." "Tell me." "You challenge Rowan directly." Helena's words fell like stones. "Not Kieran. You. A formal challenge from queen to pretender, witnessed by the goddess, single combat, winner takes all." Mira stared at her. "I'm not a warrior. I'm a healer. I'd last about 30 seconds against a wolf." "Not in physical combat," Marcus corrected. "In magical combat. Moonblessed versus witch-touched. Your magic is stronger than his hired witches, Mira. We've all felt it. If you challenged him to a battle of pure power, witnessed on sacred ground, you would win. And if I didn't? Then Rowan would have the right to claim the throne, and Kieran would be bound by sacred law to step down." Helena's voice was soft but firm. "It's an enormous risk, which is why Kieran will never allow it. He'd rather go to war than put you in danger." "But war would kill thousands," Mira said quietly. "How many people die if I don't take this risk?" "Mira." "No." Kieran's voice came from the doorway, sharp with panic. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Whatever they're suggesting, the answer is no. I won't risk you, not for any crown, not for any kingdom." "You were listening. It wasn't a question. I felt your distress through the bond. Of course I came." His eyes were fierce, frightened. "And I heard enough. You're not fighting Rowan. That's final." "Is it?" Mira pulled away from him, feeling anger spark in her chest. "You swore I would be your equal, Kieran. That means I get a say in decisions that affect the kingdom. Our kingdom. Not when those decisions involve you dying." "People are already dying." Mira's voice rose. "Villages are being raided. Families are being torn apart. How many more deaths before you decide my safety isn't worth the cost?" "Every single one," Kieran snarled, his wolf rising to the surface. I would let the entire kingdom burn before I risked losing you. Don't ask me to choose between you and my crown, Mira. You'll hate the answer." The bond thrummed with his fear, his desperation, his absolute refusal to even consider putting her in danger. And Mira felt her heart break a little, because she understood she would feel the same if their positions were reversed. But understanding didn't make it right. "Then you're not the king I thought you were," she said softly, and watched him flinch. "The Kirin I fell in love with valued his people's lives. He carried the weight of their safety like a sacred duty. He wouldn't sacrifice thousands to protect one person, even if that person was his mate. Mira, I'm going to challenge Rowan." Her voice was steady, certain, with or without your blessing, because that's what a queen does. She protects her people, even when it's terrifying, even when it means risking everything. "I forbid it." Kirin's voice cracked like a whip, carrying alpha command that made even Helena and Marcus flinch. "As your king and your mate, I forbid you from taking this risk." Mira felt the command, tried to settle over her, felt the bond pull taut, as Kirin tried to use their connection to force her compliance. For a moment, she wavered, the magic pressing down on her with crushing weight. Then her moon-blessed power flared, and the command shattered like glass. Kirin stumbled back, shock written across his face. "Because I'm not just your mate," Mira said, her voice ringing with power she was only beginning to understand. "I'm moon-blessed. I'm a queen in my own right. And you swore I would always have my choices. You don't get to use the bond to control me, Kirin. Not even out of love." The silence that followed was absolute. Helena, Marcus, and Cassandra had all gone perfectly still, watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Kirin's face was a storm of emotions, fear, anger, helplessness, and under it all, devastating hurt. "You would do this?" His voice was barely a whisper. "You would risk leaving me, breaking everything we've built, for people you barely know." "I would do this, because of everything we've built." Mira crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. "You taught me what it means to be a leader. You showed me that power comes with responsibility. You made me a queen, Kirin. Did you think I would wear the crown without accepting what it means?" "I thought," his voice broke, "I thought you would stay safe. I thought I could protect you." "You can't protect me from everything, and I don't want you to." She pressed her forehead to his, feeling tears slip free. "I love you. I love you so much. It terrifies me. But I can't be the kind of queen who hides behind her king while people die. That's not who I am. It's not who you fell in love with." Through the bond, she felt his resistance crumbling, felt him recognize the truth in her words. He'd fallen for her courage, her compassion, her refusal to walk away from suffering. He couldn't ask her to become someone else, just because it would make him feel safer. "If you die," he whispered against her skin, "it will destroy me. The bond, the throne, everything. None of it means anything without you. Then help me win." Mira pulled back to meet his eyes. "Train me, teach me how to use my magic as a weapon, instead of just a tool for healing. Give me every advantage you can, and then trust me to fight for us, for our people, for the kingdom we're building together." Kirin closed his eyes, and she felt the war raging inside him, every protective instinct screaming against this, every fiber of his being wanting to lock her away where nothing could ever hurt her. But stronger than the fear was his love for her, and his understanding that controlling her would break both of them. 7 days, he finally said, his voice rough. "You have 7 days to train. I'll teach you everything I know about magical combat. And if, when you face Rowan, you'll do it with every advantage I can give you." "Thank you," Mira breathed. "Don't thank me yet." His smile was bitter. "Because I'm going to train you so hard, you'll wish you'd never suggested this. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be able to face down an army of witches and walk away unscathed. Promise? On my life, on my crown, on the bond between us. I promise." He pulled her close, holding her like he could shield her from the future through sheer force of will. "You're going to win, Mira, because I can't survive in a world without you." If Mira's courage and this impossible love story have kept you hooked, subscribe now, because you won't want to miss how this ends. Join the thousands who believe some bonds are worth fighting for. The 7 days that followed were the hardest of Mira's life. Kiran trained her with the intensity of a general preparing for war. Each morning before dawn, they would go to the fortress's training grounds, and he would push her magic to its limits and beyond. She learned to shape her moon-blessed power into shields and weapons, to sense magical attacks before they landed, to turn an opponent's spell back on them with devastating precision. Your power is raw, Kiran explained on the 3rd day, watching as Mira shattered a target stone with a blast of silver light. Most moon-blessed spend years learning control. You have days. So we're going to focus on instinct over technique. When Rowan's witches attack, your magic will know what to do. Trust it. And if it doesn't know? Mira asked, breathing hard. Then I'll kill every single person who hurt you, burn the shadow territory to ash, and spend the rest of my life mourning. His voice was matter-of-fact, and the terrifying thing was that she knew he meant every word. By the 5th day, she could maintain a shield strong enough to stop a physical attack. By the 6th, she could sense magical traps before walking into them, and by the 7th, when Kiran threw everything he had at her in a mock battle that left them both exhausted and bloody, she held her own. You're ready, he admitted that night, as they lay together in the aftermath, her head on his chest. I hate it, but you're ready. You're going to walk into that clearing tomorrow, and show Rowan exactly what a moon-blessed queen can do. I'm terrified, Mira confessed. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. His arms tightened around her. Just remember you're fighting for them, for our people, but you're also fighting for us, for every morning we get to wake up together, for every night like this, for the future we're building. Don't let him take that from us, Mira. Don't let him win. I won't. She turned to kiss him, pouring everything she felt into it, love, and fear, and determination, and hope. I promise you, Kiran, I'm coming back to you, always. The challenge took place at dawn, on the same sacred ground where they'd performed the blood ritual. Rowan was already there when they arrived, surrounded by his remaining loyalists and 3 witches whose eyes glowed sickly green with borrowed power. So, Rowan drawled as Mira approached, the little human queen has decided to play warrior. How touching, and how foolish. Not foolish, Mira corrected, her voice carrying across the clearing. Strategic. You want the throne, Rowan? Then fight me for it. Single combat, witnessed by the goddess, magical duel to submission or death. Do you accept? Rowan's laugh was ugly. I accept. And when I've killed you, when your precious mate is broken by grief, I'll take his throne and his kingdom. Everything he loves, I'll destroy. You can try. Mira stepped into the circle marked on the ground, feeling her magic rise in response. The moonstone in her circlet flared bright, and power flooded through her, not just her own, but something older, deeper. The goddess's blessing maybe, or just the strength that came from fighting for something worth dying for. The crone stepped forward to officiate, her ancient face grave. Let all who witness know that this challenge is sacred and binding. The victor takes the crown. The defeated forfeits all claims. There will be no second chances, no mercy, no appeals. She looked at Mira, then Rowan. When I step back, you begin. May the goddess favor the worthy. She withdrew, and the clearing fell silent. Rowan attacked first, his witches channeling power through him, that manifested as green lightning. Mira's shield came up instinctively, deflecting the blast into a nearby tree that exploded into splinters. She retaliated with a wave of silver light that forced Rowan back 3 steps. They traded blows like that, for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Rowan had power, the combined strength of 3 witches fueling his magic. But Mira had something stronger. She had purpose. She had love. She had a kingdom of people depending on her, and a mate whose heart beat in time with hers. She had everything to fight for, and that made her unstoppable. When Rowan's next attack came, a spell designed to rip the life force from her body, Mira didn't defend. Instead, she reached for the bond, for Kieran's strength and her own, and channeled everything she was into a single, devastating counterspell. Silver light exploded from her hands, so bright that everyone watching had to shield their eyes. It struck Rowan square in the chest, and he screamed, the witch's borrowed power burning away like paper in a fire. He fell to his knees, gasping, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Yield," Mira commanded, standing over him with power still crackling at her fingertips. "Yield, and I'll let you live. Keep fighting, and I'll end you." For a moment, she thought he might be stupid enough to try again. Then he saw the gathered wolves watching, saw his witches unconscious on the ground, saw that he had truly, finally lost. "I yield," he rasped. "The throne is yours." The clearing erupted in howls of triumph. Kieran was suddenly there, pulling Mira into his arms and spinning her around, his joy and relief flooding through the bond so strongly she could barely breathe. "You did it," he whispered fiercely. "My clever, brave, impossible mate. You saved us all." "We saved us," Mira corrected, clinging to him. "Together. Always together." The crone approached, her smile warm. "Well fought, young queen. The goddess is pleased." She turned to Rowan, her expression cooling. "You are banished from all 5 territories. Take your loyalists, and go. If you ever return, the curse of the goddess herself will strike you down." Rowan staggered to his feet, and for just a moment, Mira saw something in his eyes. Not quite remorse, but maybe the beginning of understanding. "You could have killed me," he said quietly. "Why didn't you?" "Because mercy is stronger than cruelty," Mira replied. "Because I'm not you, and because maybe, somewhere far from here, you'll learn that power isn't worth having if you have to destroy everyone to get it." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once, and turned away. His remaining followers, barely a dozen now, trailed after him, and Mira watched them go with a strange mix of pity and relief. "Is it really over?" she asked Kieran. "It's really over." He pressed his forehead to hers, his hands cupping her face with infinite gentleness. "You're safe. The kingdom is secure. We can finally just be what? Together, happy, whatever we want." His smile was brilliant, free of the weight he'd carried for so long. "You've given me peace, Mira. Real peace, for the first time in 20 years. How can I ever repay that?" "You already have." She kissed him softly, feeling the bond sing with contentment. "You gave me a crown, a kingdom, and a purpose I never knew I needed. You taught me to be brave. You showed me what love looks like when it's real and honest and worth fighting for." "Then we're even," he murmured, against her lips. "My queen, my mate, my heart." The wolves around them were celebrating, but Mira barely noticed. She was too focused on Kieran, on the bond between them, on the future spreading out ahead like an endless path of moonlight. She'd walked into a cursed forest to save her grandmother, and found a king in chains. She'd given her blood to free him, and bound herself to a destiny she never chose. But along the way, she'd fallen in love. She'd found her strength. She'd become someone she barely recognized, someone brave and powerful and capable of changing the world. The girl from Thornwick Village was gone. In her place stood a queen. 6 months later, Mira stood in her private garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. The fortress had become home in ways she never expected, filled with laughter and purpose, and the endless work of ruling a kingdom. She'd taken 3 moon-blessed girls as apprentices, teaching them to control their power and understand their worth. She'd established healing houses in every major territory, places where the sick and injured could find care regardless of their pack status. She'd reformed laws that had been unjust, arbitrated disputes between territories, and slowly, carefully, turned the court of Night and Fang into something that resembled a true home rather than a battlefield. And through it all, Kieran had been beside her, supporting her, challenging her, loving her with an intensity that still took her breath away. "There you are." His voice came from behind her, warm and familiar. "I've been looking for you." "I needed some air." She turned to find him carrying a letter, his expression carefully neutral. "What's that?" "A message from your grandmother." He handed it to her. "She's invited us to visit Thornwick. There's a festival in 2 weeks. She thought you might want to come home for it." Home. The word caught in Mira's throat. She'd been back to Thornwick twice since leaving, but always briefly, always with the weight of royal duty hanging over her. The idea of going just to visit, just to be Mira for a while, instead of Queen Mira, was suddenly overwhelmingly appealing. "Can we?" she asked. "Is the kingdom secure enough for us to disappear for a few days?" "The kingdom will survive without us." Kieran pulled her close, his hand settling at her waist. "Helena and Marcus can handle things here, and I think it would be good for us to remember where we came from, to see the clearing where this all started." "Where I freed a wolf from chains," Mira murmured, smiling at the memory. "Was it really only 6 months ago? It feels like a lifetime." It was a lifetime. He kissed her forehead, right over the mark that still glowed faintly when she used her magic. "The life before, and the life after, and I know which one I prefer." "Me too." She stood on her toes to kiss him properly, pouring all her love into it. "Let's go. Let's visit Gran, and see the village and walk through that cursed forest together. I want to show you where I used to gather herbs, where I used to dream about adventure without understanding what it would cost." "And what did it cost?" Kieran asked softly. Mira thought about everything she'd given up. Her simple life, her safety, her certainty about who she was and what she wanted. She thought about the fear and the pain, and the impossible choices she'd had to make. Then she thought about what she'd gained. A love that would last forever, a purpose that mattered, a strength she never knew she possessed. She thought about the girls she was teaching, the people she was helping, the kingdom she was building alongside a king who saw her as his equal in every way. "Everything," she said honestly, "and nothing, because what I gained was worth infinitely more." Kieran's smile was radiant, and when he kissed her this time, it tasted like promise and joy and forever. They would go to Thornwick. They would visit the forest where their story began, and then they would return to Shadow Peak, to their throne and their people and their life together. Because Mira had learned something important in the 6 months since she'd freed a wolf from iron chains. Sometimes the greatest adventures don't take you away from home. Sometimes they show you that home was never a place at all. It was a person, a bond, a love worth fighting for. She'd been a village girl who freed a wolf. Now she was a queen who'd helped save a kingdom. But most importantly, she was simply Mira, loved and loving, brave and occasionally terrified, learning every day what it meant to be worthy of the crown she wore, and the man who stood beside her. And that, she thought as Kieran pulled her close, and the bond hummed with perfect contentment, was the greatest adventure of all.